So Joe Biden basically threatened war with China, and the White House tried to walk back the comments and kind of soften what he said. Let's take a look at this. Right here, you can see from Reuters, quote, on his first trip to Asia since taking office, U.S. President Joe Biden says he would be willing to use force to defend Taiwan.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made. We support the one China policy. We support all that we've done in the past. But that does not mean that China has the ability, the jurisdiction to go in and use force to take over Taiwan. So we stand firmly with Japan and with other nations not to let that happen. And my expectation is it will not happen. It will not be attempted. And my expectation is a lot of it depends upon just how strongly the world makes clear that that kind of action is going to result in long-term disapprobation by the rest of the community.
That's what Biden said on his first trip. This is China's response. China's response to Biden's comments.
台湾是中国领土不可分割的一部分。台湾问题纯属中国内政，不容任何外部势力干涉。在涉及中国主权和领土完整等核心利益问题上，中方没有任何妥协退让余地。任何人不要低估中国人民捍卫国家主权和领土完整的坚强决心、坚定意志、强大能力。不要站在14亿中国人民的对立面。
Wow, very clear, man. Very clear. Again, I get it. I get it. Can you imagine if the U.S. said that about Puerto Rico? If China said that about Puerto Rico, like, yeah, you know, we're going to give them weapons and arm them and support them against the U.S. They would lose it, right? And again, this is very important because you have to understand something. For the last 50 years, every U.S. president has abided by the one China policy. That means that Taiwan is part of China and it's indivisible, and that they recognize the People's Republic of China as the legitimate Chinese government. So basically, you know, the U.S. State Department the other day, you know what they did? They changed the language on the website, and that caused the Chinese to, you know, hit back with strong comments. And I showed this to you, right? So again, on the State Department website, you can see their relationship with Taiwan. They say that the United States does not support Taiwan independence, and that it respects the one China policy. And then the State Department changed the wording. It gives the impression that it's the same, but it doesn't say clearly the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence. Like, that sentence was removed, right? And the Chinese realized, and they ain't happy. And, you know, Biden really got some balls to just go and say this stuff. Really just reckless, honestly. Absolutely reckless and provocative. Again, imagine the Chinese president coming to Puerto Rico and saying, like, yeah, you know, we'll support you guys to fight the U.S. Like, what is that? You know, again, the Chinese consider Taiwan China. It's not something else. Here's what the White House said, right? White House officials later said that Biden simply meant the U.S. would provide military equipment to Taiwan, not send troops to defend the island if China attacks, which would constitute a landmark shift in policy. Since taking office, Biden has repeatedly used language about Taiwan that appeared to alter policy in place since around the time the U.S. switched diplomatic recognition to Beijing. Last year, Biden or his aides needed to clarify his remarks on Taiwan on at least 4 separate occasions, including his description of the island as quote-unquote independent, China's oft-stated red line for an invasion. His comments on Monday were particularly striking because they came at a high-profile event on his first trip to Asia. The U.S. policy of quote-unquote strategic ambiguity on Taiwan, which Biden has backed repeatedly during his time in Washington, is intended to minimize the risk of a direct conflict with China, which claims the separately governed island as part of its territory, despite never controlling it. So you can see, the White House basically walking back his remarks because of how reckless they are multiple times. This is like when the other week, last month, Biden said, this man cannot stay in charge, and he was talking about Russian President Vladimir Putin. What is that? You want to coup him? Like regime change? You've never had a U.S. president say something like that, even during the Cold War. And, Lloyd Austin, the U.S. Defense Secretary, just openly saying, yeah, we want to weaken Russia. You've never had this sort of rhetoric. They're really brazen about it and reckless. And now they're doing it with China as well. When you're fighting a war, which is what the United States is doing, it's fighting Russia, you don't go and open up a second front, you moron. I mean, what are they doing? Really, what are they doing? Is this really the right time to be making, an enemy with China? I don't understand who is running around in Washington making these decisions. Here's from MSNBC. Biden's confusing Taiwan-China remarks deal a blow to his credibility. Wow, actually something critical in MSNBC. President Joe Biden turned heads on Monday when he pledged that the U.S. would militarily intervene against China if it invaded Taiwan, and signaled that his commitment to the island was stronger than to Ukraine. The confrontational statement marked a sharp departure from the U.S. policy of strategic ambiguity on Taiwan that has prevailed for decades. Shortly after his remarks, Biden's administration downplayed the statement, saying that the president had in fact not meant to signal a policy change, and that the usual U.S. posture on Taiwan remained intact. Same thing with Putin. When Biden said that, this guy can't stay in charge, Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, she had to, again, say, oh, no, he didn't mean it like that. No. Embarrassing, really embarrassing. And I want to say another thing. This is not just embarrassing. This is extremely provocative. He's going into their backyard and saying this stuff. Do you understand? This is their turf. Their turf. This is China's turf. And he's, shamelessly saying this. This is provocative. I really don't understand people who think that this is smart. Like, put yourself in the shoes of the Chinese. Put yourself in their position. Imagine how disrespectful this stuff is. I don't understand. Like, why not build bridges? Do things that are cooperative. Enter the Belt and Road Initiative. I don't know. Something constructive. No. Always provocations, and it's becoming a familiar pattern. Biden makes a bold statement, expressing a new degree of readiness for war with a rival or adversary like China or Russia. And then his own staff walks it back. What is this link exactly about? Is that about Putin? Yeah, told you. This article is basically saying the exact same things I just said to you, a few seconds ago. Biden's news-making moment happened during a press conference in Tokyo alongside Japanese Prime Minister Kishida. So, again, he's, right in their backyard and making threats. So that is, in fact, not the commitment the U.S. had made. Okay? The traditional posture of the United States is to deliberately not specify what the U.S. would do in response to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, a self-governing island populated by 23 million people, which China has considered a breakaway province that belongs to it since 1949. Under the One China policy that's been in place since 1979, the U.S. officially recognizes China's position on Taiwan, but also maintains significant informal diplomatic ties with the island nation, and, here we go, supplies it with arms. So when you see pictures of the, Taiwan army, or so-called Taiwan army, you'll see them, of course, draped in, American armor, armaments, machine guns, and so on. They're talking about Biden even once chided George W. Bush for doing exactly what he just did himself. After Bush said in 2001 that he would, quote-unquote, do whatever it took to defend Taiwan from China, then Senator Joe Biden penned a critical op-ed in the Washington Post. Quote, as a matter of diplomacy, there is a huge difference between reserving the right to use force and obligating ourselves a priori to come to the defense of Taiwan, he wrote. In the piece, Biden emphasized that, quote, words matter in diplomacy. Man, come on. Don't you just love this irony? It's amazing. It's amazing. Wow. I love it. Biden should read his own words, perhaps, right? He should take some of his own advice. He's right. He's absolutely right. Yeah. Words matter in diplomacy. They absolutely do. But it's unclear exactly how much Biden's words matter. Shortly after his remarks, a White House official told NBC News that, quote unquote, our policy has not changed, which is tantamount to a walkback. That's because Biden responded affirmatively to a question about whether the U.S. would intervene militarily to defend Taiwan, in contrast to the U.S. declining to do so in Ukraine. He also did not qualify his statement or hedge in any way. You know, I just noticed something a while back. Why do these reporters always ask these questions like, when are you going to start a war? Are you going to start a war? Would you start a war if this, that? Like, what is wrong with you? Why can't you ask some, normal questions that are not warmongering? They always do this. Always do this. It's kind of like they're, practically egging the presidents on. Like, are you a pussy? Right? Like in public, like you are going to take action, right? You're not going to just stand there. Would you invade? It's incredible, man. I don't know what they should just join the PR department at the Pentagon. At another point, Biden emphasized how he perceived defending Taiwan as more high stakes than Ukraine. The idea that can be taken by force, is just not appropriate to say of Taiwan. It would dislocate the entire region and be another action similar to what happened in Ukraine. And so it's a burden that is even stronger. While Biden certainly sounded like he was signaling a policy shift to the world, his administration claimed that he didn't. Biden's administration has actually done this whole dance at least twice before on Taiwan, each time the president seeming to stake out a new, more bellicose position, and his staff doing cleanup after. Biden also had similar things happen with Russia policy when, for example, his staff had to clarify that the U.S. was not seeking regime change in Moscow after Biden said Putin cannot remain in power. This is exactly what I was telling you about. And again, actually a nice article on MSNBC. I'm not gonna lie, this was actually good for once. I guess it's the exception that confirms the rule. There are some more things that should have been added in here. I would, of course, add that it's not just the words. The United States is provoking China by creating AUKUS, so this military alliance with Australia, the UK, the US. This is a provocation, and they want to give Australia not nuclear-armed, nuclear-powered submarines. It's different. And China signed a security pact with the Solomon Islands, and the Americans immediately exploded, and they were saying, no, you can't do this. If you put a base here, we will be forced to intervene militarily, making threats, basically, sending a delegation to make threats. And, they're trying to tell China, basically, that it's not allowed to move anywhere in the region, and they are going to take over. They say this in the form of, we are providing stability to the Indo-Pacific. Like, that's extremely vague. What does that even mean? Their idea of stability means war, right? It's like when they say, we're bringing stability to Iraq. What stability, man? You got car bombs going off every second. We know what they mean. Yeah, it's nonsense. So, they're egging China on, and yes, what Biden is saying, what comes out of his mouth, matters. But the actions also, you need to look at that as well. Basically trying to pimp out, Australia even more. Australia is referred to, jokingly as a unsinkable U.S. aircraft carrier because it cooperates so much with the U.S. Americans, they can actually access Australian army bases, not all of them, but some of them. There's a U.S. spy station called Pine Gap in Australia. It's one of the most crucial spy stations for the U.S. military and intelligence, and it's instrumental in the so-called war on terror. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that this piece of equipment, this facility on Australian soil, which is run by the Americans, has killed a lot of innocent people, right? A lot of civilians, and ironically, I think there's a room in there where Australians are not allowed to go into, something like that. I need to look that up again. But basically, my point here is that it shows you how much the Americans are running the show. And man, the influence that the Americans have over Australia, unbelievable, really unbelievable. They're like a vassal state practically, which is a shame. And, now they're trying to make Australia even more, how shall we say, pimped out by giving it these submarines, but also Tomahawk cruise missiles and a whole bunch of other things. We went through them a few weeks ago again. So, you know, a lot of things. And, you know, Australia and China have had a lot of spats in the last years, right? Basically, you have a lot of people, not everyone, but you have some people in Australia who like absolutely hate China. They want to go to war with China. You know, China posted, it's some Chinese government official on Twitter. He posted a picture of an Australian soldier killing a lamb or a goat or something. I don't remember what it was. And this picture alluded to the war crimes that Australia committed in Afghanistan, right? So I've seen the videos, the helmet cam footage, horrific, straight up murder, straight up disgusting executions, horrific shit. And, you know, we all know about it now, and I've reported on it. It's horrific. I can't even show you the video because it'll probably get censored. Really awful, really awful stuff. And this is the Australian SAS, their special forces, and the British SAS as well. They're guilty of this. And, you know, basically China was posting this picture, and then Australia was demanding an apology. Can you imagine? For a photo that is accurate, that is accurately alluding to Australian brutality against against Afghans, which is true. This is a fact. It's not made up. And they wanted an apology from China. They're ridiculous, you know. So I'm not just talking about Twitter spats, but there are really like big debates about what to do with China. Like, oh, China's a threat, and all this stuff, which is kind of stupid because, you know, at the end of the day, Australia needs China, right? When we look at the economy, you know, China is Australia's largest trading partner. So when you cut that off, I mean, you're screwing yourself, right? It's like the phrase in English, cutting off your nose to spite your face. This is how it is, right? It's like European countries that, you know, they're ready to cut off gas that they're receiving from Russia just to please the Americans. It's suicidal, you know, but they don't care. So in any case, you know, my point is there's already been a lot of tension the last years between Australia and China, and the Americans coming in and arming the Australians. Straight up provocation. I don't care what anyone says. If you don't understand how this works, how international relations works, you know, it's not about what they say. It's also about what they do, and you got to pay attention. You know, every single move has a meaning behind it, right? You have to pay attention and read between the lines. Here's a tweet from Chris Murphy. So he's a senator in Connecticut. And he said the important thing to remember when analyzing what presidents say about going to war to defend Taiwan is that the president actually doesn't get to make that decision. Congress does. So yeah, that's a good tweet. But again, what happens? What did I tell you guys a few moments ago? The president of the United States can just do whatever he wants. And he has 48 hours to notify Congress, right? And then Congress can decide to allow the military action to continue or to stop it within the 60 days. And that has never stopped, right? It's never happened because the people in Congress want the wars. So you can write whatever crap you want. You can do anything that's completely illegal and just send this piece of paper to Congress, and they're not going to do anything because they want the war. So, you know, there's no checks and balances. But he's right, though. He's right. Let me show you this clip here. This is from the former Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, talking about Biden's comments. Let's take a look.
The U.S. is, quote, playing with fire. That is the warning from China after President Biden said today the U.S. would use force if China invaded Taiwan.
You didn't want to get involved in the Ukraine conflict militarily for obvious reasons. Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are.
That's the commitment we made.
It was very clear. No equivocation. It is the second time, in fact, in recent months that Biden has said that the United States would defend Taiwan. And the second time, in fact, that the White House has then subsequently rushed to walk the words back and say, actually, no, the President of the United States doesn't speak for U.S. policy. There hasn't been a policy change. Out front now, Mark Esper. He's the former defense secretary under President Trump and the author now of the brand new book, A Sacred Oath, Memoirs of a Secretary of Defense During Extraordinary Times. Secretary Esper, I really appreciate your time. And so this is, the second time here that President Biden has been, unequivocal, completely clear that the U.S. would defend Taiwan in case of invasion from China. Second time that the United States administration has been quick to say, actually, there's been no change in policy. And of course, so what's going to happen here? Is he right that U.S. would go to war with China if it invades Taiwan?
Well, first of all, Aaron, thanks for inviting me onto the show. I finished my book about a year ago, and I have an entire chapter on China. And in that chapter, I talk about this specific issue that I had felt that the one China policy had run its course, that China and Taiwan had evolved in different ways since diplomatic relations were opened in the 70s. And I thought it was time to have this broader discussion about what our policy is. I think President Biden is being completely honest. I think his instincts are right. And this may indeed be the third time he said this very unequivocally. Yeah. And it continues to amaze me that the White House staff walks him back on this.
Okay, so you think he's right then in terms of how he reads it, but also the message that it sends to China, and you feel that is the right way to go?
Yeah. Even in the 1979 Taiwan Relations Act, there's language in there that says that any move by China in this case to determine the future of Taiwan by other than peaceful means would be considered a security matter and a grave threat to the United States. That's diplomatic language for fighting words, if you will.
So obviously, this is not what we heard from Trump, but Trump was tough with China on trade. Okay, that's just clear, and we should be direct about that. But in other areas, when you talk about Trump in your book, you talk about how he initially did not embrace being as tough as you and others in the administration felt was necessary. You, of course, as Secretary of Defense, and you write here.
He wasn't being neocon enough.
And I'm quoting your book. In a rare moment, I saw him chastise Mike Pompeo for being too aggressive in public remarks that the Secretary of State made about the PRC, the People's Republic of China, asking Mike to please dial it down as they sat opposite each other across the Resolute desk. Pompeo paused for a moment, acknowledged Trump's request, and nodded in agreement. So
Pompeo was probably thinking to himself, how can Mr. Trump have an accident? CIA style. This is really funny, man. This is really funny. They're such war hawks. Oh my God.
What do you make of Trump's handling of China? He did become more critical, of course, as COVID spread across the U.S., right? Infamously calling it the China virus. How much of that was a real turn and really taking on China, and how much of it was political and not wanting to look weaker than Joe Biden on the issue during the election?
Right. This is a great topic, and I write about it in detail, as you note. And I've tried to be fair and complete and accurate in my book. And one thing.
Yeah. Okay. We get it. You wrote a book, man. We get it. We get it. He's trying so hard to plug the book. Oh God, where did I skip now? Sorry.
Secretary of Defense. And you write an article, of course, as COVID spread across the U.S., right? Infamously calling it not wanting to look weaker than Joe Biden on the issue during the election.
Right. This is a great topic, and I write about it in detail, as you note. And I've tried to be fair and complete and accurate in my book. And one thing I think the Trump administration deserves credit for is forging a consensus within the United States government that China is a strategic adversary of ours. But as I also write, the president wasn't fully on board with all the parameters of the policy. He seemed to really focus on the trade piece of it, and really, in many ways, wanted to build this friendship with President Xi Jinping that in some ways undermined our efforts. Look, the policy with regard to China has to be multi-dimensional. It has to encompass diplomatic, economic, trade, political, human rights, freedom, Hong Kong, you name it. And he wasn't there on all those issues, which I thought was the soft spot. He did get tougher in the final year, I think, because China's handling of COVID really undermined a great economy and thus his re-electoral chances.
All right. So let me ask you about that, because you talk about in the book something that, people should read to hear your thoughts, because you talk about many times that you thought about resigning as Trump's defense secretary and the reasons that you did not, that you didn't for what you said was sake of the country, and that a fear that he would replace you with a sycophant and a person who would just say yes. And then you sum up the final months of his presidency. You write, the president seemed to surround himself with more and more sycophants who would blindly do his bidding, agree with his ideas, and implement his plans regardless of the consequences. The country became like a runaway car barreling down a hill with Trump behind the wheel and his loyalists pushing down hard on the accelerator. Okay, by all accounts, Secretary Esper, Donald Trump is the GOP frontrunner for 2024. If he runs, it's his for the taking. That is just what every single Republican strategist says. What do you think it would mean, or if he won, what would it mean for the country?
Well, look, first of all, I'm not certain that if he tries to run, he will be the front runner. I think what's good to see is that their potential 2024 candidates are starting to step out and show some distance. On your previous segment, you talked about Mike Pence in Georgia. Mike Pompeo in Pennsylvania is opposing the Trump-endorsed candidate. So I'm hoping that that's not the case. I'm hoping President Trump doesn't decide to run, and further, that he doesn't involve himself in the contest. Now, I know that second part is highly unlikely, but look, if he does, I've said before that I'm concerned. I think that a future GOP candidate, and I consider myself a Reagan Republican, should meet some core criteria. Number one, put country above self. Number two, have integrity and follow a core set of principles. And number three, be able to reach across the aisle, work with others, and unite the American people. And President Trump just doesn't do that for me. All
right. Well, Secretary Esper, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And as I said, Secretary Esper's new book is just out now. Thank you, sir.
We get it. Yeah, okay. He has a new book, guys. Did you know that there's a book? I'm telling you, there's a book. He wrote a book. There's a new book. Okay, so just a couple thoughts. The first thing, that came to my mind, I think this guy is just trying to, it's like rats escaping from a sinking ship or jumping from a sinking ship. That's what he's doing. He is basically trying to, position himself as, I tried to do the right thing, and Trump, he just, he wouldn't listen, and it's really horrible what he did, and trying to, basically curry favor with, Democrats and so on. It's what a lot of them are doing, right? A lot of neoconservatives basically going and, being embraced by Democrats to try and whitewash their image. They go and say, oh, Trump is this and that. He's not a real Republican. And, by making Trump out to be the worst president in modern history, they can shift the focus away from what they did with Bush, right? I mean, you really got to laugh when neoconservatives are saying that Trump was the worst president. Like, as if, they didn't work with the Bush administration. They're really cowards. Everyone knows Bush was the worst. It's not even close. Bush is the worst, really. It doesn't mean Trump was good. No, far from it. In any case, he's talking about basically Trump not being hard enough on China. Do you see how eager these people are to go to war? There's something wrong with them. This is not a defense secretary, he's like, the way he talks, he's talking about offensive things. Nothing he said has to do with protecting the United States. It's all about, our position, our posture with China. What the fuck? Leave China alone, man. Why do you have to have a posture or whatever with China? Why? Why do you choose this route? Why do you insist on doing this? And all he says is, oh, Trump wasn't hard enough. Oh, Trump didn't do this and that. My goodness, there really is something. These war hawks, really something. I mean, Trump. Honestly, man, Trump. I'm surprised that he didn't start a war with Iran, because when he killed Soleimani, Iran has every right in the world to start a war and retaliate. Every right in the world. And because if Iran had assassinated an American general, and again, they're not the same caliber. You can't equate some random American general, even a 4-star general, with Soleimani, because they're not the same people. They don't play the same role. So my point is, if Iran had, killed an American general, the United States would invade Iran. They'd attack it. There would be a bloodbath. I don't understand why, they think they can do whatever they want with China, provoke China, and basically say, that they're going to get involved militarily. Is Biden, is that a Freudian slip? What's going on here? Because you can see that multiple times he said this. So it makes you wonder what's going on. Remember, they lie. They're politicians. So when his staff come and say, oh, it was just a gaffe, our policy towards Taiwan hasn't changed. Really? You sure? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what's going on. I'm really not sure. when I was talking to Scott Ritter, again, go watch that interview, lovely. We were talking about this, how, when the Americans killed Russian generals and sank the Moskva, and when I say this, I mean they helped the Ukrainians to do it. They leaked it to the press, right? They said in the New York Times that, oh, we helped sink that Russian ship, the flagship, the Moskva. My cat is trying to get in. I think it misses me. I mean, it's dangerous, right? It's provocative. And then what happened afterwards? They had to kind of walk back the comments officially, right? So the U.S. government came out and said, no. We did not intentionally kill Russian generals. We did not intentionally sink the Russian ship. They try to walk it back because it's inflammatory, it's provocative, and it's dangerous, right? So that's why his staff are doing this with Biden. It doesn't mean that their policy, has stayed the same necessarily. Biden could have been telling the truth. They just don't want people to know that. And, you don't want to give away the game. So in any case, I'm not sure whether Biden was telling the truth or not. Could have been a Freudian slip. It's just, what is that, the third or fourth time he does this regarding Taiwan, and then, they have to walk it back. I don't know, man. I really don't know. He could be telling the truth. What do you guys think? Honestly, tell me, what do you guys think? Do you think that when Biden is saying, they're going to send U.S. troops to help Taiwan attack China or whatever, do you think he's telling the truth and it accidentally slipped out and, his staff are trying to do damage control? What do you think? I'm waiting to read your comments. Angry Happy says he's telling the truth. Biden's telling the truth. William says he's telling the truth. Jerry says no, he's not. All of the comments are saying, please show the cat. I did a Christmas stream here on the channel, and me and my cat, we both had the Christmas hats, the Santa hats. Spang says the answer was one word. Lou says, of course, Biden meant it. Spang says, no, he meant it. 2024 says, Biden did not mean it. Mandy Jones says, Richard, I want to see your cat, pretty please. Most of you think he was telling the truth. In any case, here's the response from China. The U.S. is playing with fire on Taiwan, China warns. China has warned that the United States is playing with fire after President Joe Biden said that Washington would defend Taiwan militarily if the self-governed island is attacked by Beijing. The Chinese State Council's Taiwan Affairs Office said on Monday that the U.S. is using the Taiwan card to contain China and will itself get burned. State outlet Xinhua cited the office's spokesperson, Zhu Fenglian, as saying that he urges the U.S. to, quote, stop any remarks or actions that violate previously established principles between Beijing and Washington. So that basically telling Biden not to violate the one China policy. Speaking from Tokyo during a trip to Asia, Biden had answered with an unambiguous yes when asked by reporters whether the U.S. would get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it is attacked by China. Pressed further about the apparent shift in U.S. policy, Biden said that, quote, that's the commitment we made. Look, here's the situation. Look, here's the deal. The fact of the matter is, he always uses those introductory things. Anyway, Biden said, quote, look, here's the situation. We agree with the one China policy. We've signed on to it and all the attendant agreements made from there, the U.S. president added. Quote, but the idea that it can be just taken by force is just not appropriate. By the way, another thing that I should have mentioned is, all these countries, like the United States, they boycotted the Olympics in China, didn't they? Right? Do you remember why? Do you remember what their reasoning was? Right, so it was the United States, and then I think the UK and Canada and in Australia. Yeah, they were all boycotting the China Olympics, and they cited, of course, several matters. It's 3 or 4 of them, right? So number 1 is Taiwan. Number 2, Uyghur Muslims, so in the Xinjiang province, and number 3, Tibet, and number 4 was dang it, I forgot. It'll come back to me. But my point is, Hong Kong, of course. Now listen to what I have to say. A few years ago, not that long ago, in 2008, You know, I've showed you that video where Hillary Clinton was in China and praising them and speaking of how they're going to have this lovely, bilateral relationship. They're going to build so many good things in the future together. You know, nice speech. Great. Yeah, very, very constructive and positive. And you know why that was? Because, of course, the Americans were begging for that Chinese money, right? And it's interesting to me that back then Hillary Clinton had nothing to say about Uyghurs. She had nothing to say about Hong Kong. She had nothing to say about Taiwan, right? She had nothing to say about Tibet. Interesting, right? So, those things, now you could argue, well, yes, some of those things were not issues. There were no Hong Kong protests and so on. What about Tibet? Tibet, that issue didn't start just yesterday. Huh? So where are all these criticisms of China, right? They just popped out of nowhere now, all of a sudden. This is how the apparatus works. Every time the West wants to attack a country, all of a sudden they find these reasons. They suddenly realize how evil this person is. It's like Saddam Hussein. You remember they were literally giving him weapons of mass destruction. Donald Rumsfeld coming to Iraq, shaking his hand. You've seen the video, right? This is an iconic video. Everybody knows this. So, Donald Rumsfeld, who then became, under Bush, he became the defense secretary. Here we go. Look at them. Lovely little friends, no worries. There's Saddam Hussein, Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And so, of course, they were using him to attack Iran. And, they didn't have a problem with him gassing the Iranians. Those weapons of mass destruction were okay. That's okay, right? You can gas the Iranians. Go ahead, sure. And, it's like all of a sudden a few years later, they realize, oh, he's a dictator. Oh, he's this and that. All of a sudden, like as if they didn't know it before. They didn't know who he was. Here's another one. Y'all ain't ready for this. You're not ready for this. So Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian president. Well, here he is, number 10 Downing Street, right? Number 10 Downing Street is basically the White House in the UK. It's where the prime minister it works, and then it lives upstairs, I think, in number 11. There's Bashar al-Assad with his wife, who's actually British, and Tony Blair, right? Oh, they're nice friends. Lovely. Very good. There's also the Queen. Look, Bashar al-Assad and his wife meeting the Queen. They even stayed at Buckingham Palace. Wow. What a privilege. Huh? Look, they're all nice and friendly. Nice and friendly. And then, in 2011... They suddenly realized, oh, this guy's a dictator, actually. Oh, he's this and that. Okay. Like they didn't know before. Huh? They didn't see it before. You're really funny. Really funny. You know what these pictures are? This is the West trying to court Bashar al-Assad, because when his father died, he took over, right? He wasn't meant to be president. His older brother was meant to be president, but he died in a car crash. And Bashar is basically an eye doctor. He studied in the UK, and his wife grew up. She's born, I'm not sure if born in the UK, but certainly raised in the UK. So in any case, my point is that they were trying to court him because they thought he's more progressive than his father, right? And we can maybe bring him on our side and make a Syria, mold a Syria, form a Syria that suits our purposes. And it didn't work, right? Because Syria did not change its positions on supporting Palestinian resistance and the Lebanese resistance and so on and so on. And so, he becomes then a threat to them, right? Because it didn't work. They were not able to court him. And, it's like the mafia, right? They're smiling. Hey, here's a cigar. Come on, sit down. Yeah. And then when you don't do what they say, suddenly the demon comes out. I really view international affairs, international politics like the mafia. It's like the mafia. There's no difference whatsoever. The United States, you don't give them a cut of your resources, they'll fucking come and take it, invade and kill you and get your resources, right? That's how it is. You got to pay tribute, right? You don't pay tribute. You don't let their multinational corporations come in and take over your market. You don't give a little bit of your resources. They will come and take it by force. It's like the mob, man. It's the mob. Straight up. Straight up. And even how they use people, right? Oh, Saddam Hussein is our friend. And then they hanged him. They invaded Iraq. They destroyed Iraq and hanged him. You know, Sarkozy, the French president. You know how much money Gaddafi gave him? Millions. Millions. I think it was something insane. Like, hold on, I don't want to exaggerate. Was it 5 million or 50 million? Something outrageous. I mean, even 5 million is absolutely outrageous. He gave him this money for his re-election campaign. Yeah, it was 50 million. Gaddafi gave Sarkozy 50 million fucking euros for his re-election campaign in 2007. And what does Sarkozy do 4 years later? In 2011? He fucking bombs him. Pieces of shit, man. Really pieces of shit. Right? So they use you and then they stab you in the back. And then Saddam Hussein, they used him to attack Iran, then they stabbed him in the back. And again, I'm not saying he's a nice guy necessarily, but I'm showing you the MO. The Kurds, the same thing. They used the Kurds and then stabbed them in the back. It's the mob. You know, they want to tie up loose ends, as they say in the mafia. It's really disgusting. This treacherous behavior that is practiced by, the corporations, the international corporations, the multinationals, the Western governments. It's really, really deplorable. And again, I want to make very clear, when we talk about Taiwan, this is it's China. I think it's very arrogant for the United States to be like, everybody's like asking the United States, like, what do you think about Taiwan? What the fuck does that mean? Who cares what the United States thinks about Taiwan? It's not its business. Like, what an absurd thing to do, right? Everyone is so focused on it. Who gives a shit? It's not their country. They don't get to decide what happens with Taiwan. Nothing to do with them, right? It's like you wouldn't go and ask China about Puerto Rico, whether, Puerto Rico should just declare independence and be separate. You know what the United States would do? They would send the Marines and screw you. Come on, man. We got to be realistic here, right? Thank you, Antonio, for the donation on PayPal. I appreciate it very much. And we'll see what happens with China. I'll keep you updated. Please go watch the playlist. I'm going to make a playlist now with China about, the Solomon Islands Security Pact, AUKUS, and everything else. Okay? And I'm going to fill you in on what's happening.